probably what you do right now. What does that mean to you? The first stuff in is the first stuff out.
Whatever's at the front.
Okay?
You don't want it to
No,
sell
you
old
use
stuff.
the oldest stuff so that it doesn't.
You're basically moving the oldest stuff up to the front all the time, right? So you especially want to do this if you're in what kind of business? Food, groceries, right? Okay, even your ice cream, right? Ice cream goes bad, right? I mean, most of the time you probably don't ever have to throw any out, do you? Justice?
Yeah, we have to throw.
Heck no, what?
It doesn't get used up?
Like ice cream?
Sometimes.
Really? Okay.
Not a lot.
All right, so first in, first out means basically I'm going to rotate the old stuff up front and I'm going to use it all the time. So what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to figure out the value of the inventory. So turn to page 494. On page 494, see the little, I don't know what color that is. Teal? Kind of. Light teal, light blue, okay? So this is an inventory sheet for this business. They're talking about paper shredders, all right? And see where it says the inventory period from January 1st to March 31st. And then they start going through. Notice the difference here as they go through. In January, or on January 1st, their beginning inventory, they had 40 units. And each of those 40 units was worth $20. So they took the 40 units times the $20 and they got $800. That's how much their inventory was worth on January 1st. That makes sense? Now notice as you go down through the months, or through the month and then into the other months, when they purchased more shredders, what happened to the shredders? Come on. The price went up, right? So the price basically goes back and forth, or maybe back and forth, but these just kept on rising. And in a lot of situations, that's probably what's happening in this period of time right now, right? Because some of those businesses have to try to make up for that loss of money and time. So they had to increase their product, right? Did the pizzas go up? Any? A little bit? Did the ice cream go up?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot?
Up again.
It's going up again. Okay, so those are things that you have to take into consideration. And now we're going to try to figure out how much our total inventory is worth. And the first way that we're going to try to do this is called FIFO, which is first in, first out. But when you start doing the math, it's actually a little weird because you kind of go backwards. So when you try to do the math of this, you are going to base the cost on the most recently purchased items. Okay, so is this good for us or bad for us if we base it on the most recent things that we bought in this particular example? It's actually bad for us, right? Because the most recently things that we purchased, these shredders, were $3 more than the other ones that we had at the very beginning. So, why would we want to do this? Well, it just shows you how much that you would have to spend to replace inventory right now. To keep it at a certain amount, or just to know how much all of yours is worth. So, as you can see here, they went through this process, and they tried to show if you went through each section individually, and put it by their price range. So on the 13th, it was worth $21 and so on and so forth. At the January 13th, they had a grand total of $2,100 of inventory in their building or warehouse or wherever it happened to be. Okay, so what they're trying to figure out then is how much would my ending inventory actually be worth? Or what would it cost me to replenish to have 160 shredders on hand? So when you do this, we're going to use the most recent purchase price. Okay? And I want to do the example right here as we read this instead of how we usually do it. So notice here, to find the ending inventory, actually the name is backwards because you use the latest purchase price. So this is where you got to be able to recognize this on the quiz. When it says first in, first out, the other version of this is last in, first out. So notice it says first out both times, but the first part of it tells you actually how you're going to do your calculations. So when it says first, you actually start at the end and use the last number that was in the problem. When it says last in, you actually go back and use your original inventory price that you did at the beginning. So realistically, the last in is better for us if you're going to think about prices that we would want to buy it at, but the first in would be the better for us if we're selling it because we're actually going to sell it at a higher price than what we bought it for. Okay, so in this particular example, all right, if you go to page 494, down at the bottom, it says in A, assume that the beginning inventory was 112 units and the ending inventory is 142 units. Find the ending inventory's value on the FIFO basis. So notice our little chart right above capital A. That's basically what they did at the very top of the page in the greenish, bluish chart. Okay? You don't have to make one of those charts. You're just going to try to figure out how much is your ending inventory of 142 units going to be worth? Okay? What's kind of, I guess, dumb or over redundant is you do not have to use the beginning inventory units. That does not matter to you. So for these problems right here, you basically throw out 112. All right? So what you're going to do is basically you're going to have 142 units. This is my ending inventory, and this is what I want to calculate from. So I got to get to 142. Notice the very last time that I bought these units, how many did I buy? 110, right? So I'm going to figure out that 110 of them were at how much? What does it say? Sorry, say it again.
36.
36? Okay. So did I get all of the units that I have at the end? No. So how many more do I have to figure out? 32. So basically, whatever my ending inventory is and the last amount, if I don't have enough, I'm going to subtract those, and then I'm going to do 32 more units. But now I go back one more step. So instead of using 226, I'm going to go back and use 218. So even though it says I bought 60 more units, I'm only concerned about 32 of those units. But now I get my entire 142. Does that make sense? So what is this 32 shredders going to be priced at? $37.25. Go ahead.
If it still didn't like match it, would you keep going back?
Exactly right. Did you hear what he said? So let's just say that this was, this was 300. So then if I had 110, I think this one was what, 60 or 80? 60. So 60 and 110 would still only be 170. I'd have to just keep going back and going back and going back until I had the prices for all the ones that I'd have available. Okay, so how much is this? Then we just run this into our calculator. So what's 110 times 36?
3960.
And the next one.
1192.
Now, add those together.
5152.
5,152. And this should be what? That is how much the inventory that we have at the end is worth to us right now. So basically, we would have $5,152 worth of assets in our warehouse or whatever we're talking about. That makes sense? So again, when it says FIFO or first in, first out, we go to the last thing that we brought in. That's where you got to get it clicked into your melon. When it says first, you go to the last. When we get to the LIFO, which is last, we're going to go to the first. Okay, so let's look at letter B, and I think this is what will show you about what Derek was asking. So this is A. Oops. This is B. In B, what does it say? In B, we want to do 196. So again, you only worry about the ending number. You don't worry about the beginning inventory, which was 234. Don't worry about that. So again, we start going through our ending inventory, and again, do we get 110? Yeah, we have to do 110. So again, notice that in this particular case, if I was going to do this over and over again, this is why they did this kind of chart up here. So you know that this is why you would do a chart like they did at the top of the page. If you did this, and I did this earlier, or I did this sometime, I don't know. So this is my chart, basically using the information that they gave me above letter A, putting all of those numbers in. So I could use that chart if I had to do this more than one time. You know what I'm saying? So like between this one and this one, we're basically thinking about the same method. My ending inventory increased, so I could still use my chart that I had already done. So this is kind of like a cheat sheet in a sense. Okay, so when we do 110 times 36, we would still use our same answer. And like I said, I already know that answer. One, from doing the previous problem, but two, I would have some kind of cheat sheet. So then the next one, my next possible number is 60. And notice here, when I take 110 and subtract it from 96, I get 86, right? So that means I'm going to use all 60 or whatever was in that next section. So I'm going to use 60 times 3725. And again, if you didn't already do this, then you would have to punch it into your calculator. I've already done it, so I would have my 2235 ready to go. Okay? But now I'm still only at how much? So now I had 60 here, and I still need 26 more. So then the last calculation is going to be 26, and now I'm bumped back one more stage. So what's my next price? $37. And so then to figure out the amount of inventory that I'd have for a price there, I'm going to take 26 times 37. And what'd you get? $962. And then I would add all those up, and again, I would find out what my answer is. That makes sense? So again, the biggest thing that you got to convince into your melon is that when it says first in, first out, that means that I'm going to actually start with the last thing that I brought in, but the last price. I'm still going to take the first thing that I have and move it to the front. It's just how I'm figuring out the amount of inventory or the cost of the amount of inventory. I'm not really telling myself that I'm necessarily going to do first in, first out. You're probably always going to move your old stuff to the front. Is there things that you can think of that the older that it is, it really doesn't matter? What? Wine? Okay, that's a great one, right? We like to keep our wine. What about like basic everyday things? Obviously, you wouldn't want to do this with your groceries, like you said. Clothes, maybe, right? Water? Can water go bad though? It could go stale, so probably not. Canned stuff, maybe, right?
You could put like those bags of food that you could just put water in, like hot water. And then...
Oh, like the army food things?
Well, not just like MREs, but they have these the word meal thing or something like that where you just add water.
So like the things that the astronauts eat and stuff?
Did you say dehydrated? Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, that's probably true too. I was thinking more of like nuts and bolts or something. You know? You could have a big...
We're going straight bombshell.
You could have a big old thing of nuts and bolts, and you don't necessarily have to always sell the old ones. Your nuts never really going to change, right? What are you laughing about?
What if you're the person that grabs from the back? I
What
grab
do you
from
mean?
the back.
You do?
Yeah,
I do melts from the back.
You do milk from the back?
even though it's at the front, I still grab from the back.
Well, that's because you're trying to get the newest thing that was, right? What else do you do that with? Anybody else do that? Automatically grab from something else?
I just do milk.
Milk? How about bread? Bread sometimes?
I restock my cereal thing, and I never take the old cereal at the bottom, so I'm just using new cereal.
You do?
And I wonder if the old cereal at the bottom just gets sad.
This is so gross.
It's probably so stale.
Well,
How long has it been in there?
Well, because the thing is like, it's all just the powdery stuff and the crust stuff at the bottom, so I just leave it all at the bottom.
Well, why don't you just throw
Why
it
do you
out?
wash it?
Well, I get it.
You probably get.
Because I just pour the new bag in there and it fits, so I'm like.
That's disgusting.
Why don't you wash it?
So some of that stuff is probably years
No,
old?
no, not years, like, every like 4 bags or so.
Then mom finally says, hey, I'm gonna clean this for him.
By the time it like
She doesn't really fit.
She doesn't.
My frosted flakes are.
Alright, so are we good with that?
Yeah.
Alright, so the next version of this is LIFO. Now again, this is where it says last in, first out, but you're really only using this to do your calculation. Again, you're probably normally just gonna move the old stuff to the front, except if you're Easton. Alright? So again though, I don't know why they do this, but when they say last in, first out, we're going backwards again. So when they say last, you're going back to the original amount. Now, why would we want to do this? This is where the goods were purchased last or used first. But when your prices rise a lot, or if you had a big fluctuation, this is better for you to maybe do this for tax reasons. Because you always want to report that you have less amount for taxes, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of a way that they get around with that for your net income and your income taxes. You're going to show that you have a less amount. So you're always going to go back to the beginning. Okay? So look at letter C in this one. So again, in letter C, we're going to use what they gave us right above it. And it says the beginning inventory was 12 units valued at $14.20 per unit. The ending inventory is 32 units. So find the value of your products using LIFO. So the first thing that I'm going to do again is,
Just the opposite.
yeah, basically you're doing the opposite. So you're doing 12 units at $1,400 or $14.20. So again, this is because this is where we started from. The 12 at $14.20, okay? Or that's what they originally told you. Now you're going to go into yours, and how many more units do I have to account for? 12, right? No, not 12, because there's 32 for your ending, right? And you already did 12 of them, so how many more do you have? 20. Okay, so go back to the original amount, and what's the first number that I would use? No, go back to the first number that they give you. This number right here is the original, so the next one, or the first one in the list that they give you.
Oh,
1460. So I'm going to do 20 times 1460. So this is one where it's a little weird too compared to the last one, because they actually give you the original inventory amount in the problem. And then this one right here is still doing what we did, but we're going back to the beginning instead of using the ending one. Okay, so did I get all 32 of them? Yeah. Now I'm ready to just do my calculations. So we punch this into our calculator and we get what?
170.4.
Say it one more time.
170.4.
And
292.
straight up.
462.4.
And we get our ending amount. That makes sense? So, let's look at D. The beginning inventory was 6 units valued at $14.55, and now we're doing 49 units. Okay? So, let's try this out. So we're going to do 6 times, what was the number?
1455.
1455. And our ending inventory was 49. So we did our first 6, so we need 43.
Minus 32.
So the next group is how much?
32 at 1460.
32, thank you. At 1460. So we didn't make it still. So how many do we have left? 11. Is there 11 in that next group?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can do all 11. And how much at 11?
1485.
1485. That makes sense to everybody.
Yep.
So again, when it says last, I go back to the beginning. When it says first, I start at the end. That's kind of the weird part. And then obviously I do my math and add them all up, but that's what we would be at.
Oh, here it comes.
So the grand total would have been $717.85. Is that what you got, Donald? Yeah. Everybody good with that? So again, first in, first out, we're talking about figuring out the inventory amount. We're not really figuring out what we're doing with our inventory. We're always going to move the old stuff to the front. Okay? Last but not least, one more thing. The last thing is to do weighted average. This is basically exactly what it sounds like. Weighted average. What's the average mean?
Average price.
Average price, right? So if I'm going to find the average price of all of my inventory, what would I do?
Add them up and divide by how many there are.
Add them up and divide by how many they are, right? So in letter E, it says the beginning inventory of 607 tires was valued at $201. What is the weighted average unit cost of the beginning inventory and July purchases to the nearest dollar? What is the value of the ending inventory of 308 units? So again, I don't know why they do this again to the nearest dollar, but not a real big deal. So what we're going to do in this one is try to figure out from our chart what the weighted average is. So we're basically, why would we want to use this? We would want to use this method because the price of whatever we're doing, I don't even know what it was in this one. Oh, tires. So basically they're saying that the price of tires fluctuates so much or changes so much that you couldn't be real consistent because of how many times it changes even within a month. So that's why they would use the average of it. So you're always kind of right around that exact price. Know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to do 607 tires at how much? 201. Now we go through the whole chart that they gave us and do all of that. So we had what?
12 at 208.
Okay?
786 at 202. 540 at 199. 515 at 205.
Okay? So notice the difference here. Look at my prices. All right? So they changed quite a bit. And again, why would we have a bigger fluctuation right in through there of tires? If it's in July, maybe we had some kind of, they started harvesting. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Okay? So we're going to do all of this math. So you're going to put that into your calculator for each one. And I think I already did this one. Oh no, I did F. So you would go through and you'd find all this out. Each individual grouping. Oh, yeah.
122,007. 64,896.
$158,772. $187,060.
Okay? So, how am I gonna find my weighted average? I'm gonna add all these together. Right? So 105 and all those big numbers together. We get a grand total of $638,310. Now what do I have to do? If I'm going to do the average, I'm going to take this and divide it by what? The total number of units, right? So these are my dollar amounts, so I'm going to add up all those things, right? The number of tires in this case, or whatever we're talking about.
$127,662.
How much?
$127,662.
You're doing so well,
I got 3,160.
Did you
That-
add
that is a
multiply?
huge
Huge
difference.
difference.
All you gotta do is add these ones.
Oh, yeah, it
You did do that?
does. No, I did.
So I'm gonna take that and divide by 3,160.
Calculator, man.
Okay? No, it's not the calculator. It's the guy running the calculator. So, this is equal to 201.9968. So Molly, if we're rounding to the nearest dollar, how much is that?
202.
2. Okay, now, is that my answer? What do I have to do with that new number? What do I have to do? Yeah, what's my ending inventory? Okay? So, we take $202 times $308, and at the end, we would have $62,216 worth of inventory. Right? So that's the number of tires. So of our 308 tires, if we got robbed of all of our tires, we'd lose $62,000. Yeah, right? Okay? So again, weighted average is basically exactly what it meant. It was the average of this, but we gotta make sure that, I don't know what Donald did over here.
Joke's on you.
Alright, questions here. So we'll come back on Monday and we'll work on the problems on Monday. His